Today's video features an elderly man in his 70s with some very common nail problems that we're going to discuss, so stay tuned. What's up, everybody? It's Rachel, aka the Nail Therapist. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And like I said earlier, we're going to be talking about some common questions that I get when dealing with the elderly population. First things first, if you enjoy my content and you've been watching me for a while but you haven't yet subscribed, would you do me a big favor and hit that subscribe button? And that would mean a lot for me. It really helps me expand my reach, and that's what I am really trying to do ultimately, because I want to show what it is to actually understand how to get a great pedicure. Thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate your support through all of this. I spend a lot of time on these videos. Some a little less than others, just depends on how much time I have during the week, but for the ones I actually give a lot of information on, I do spend time in the research phase just so that I have good answers to give you that are, more in depth, that just aren't the same old kind of responses that you might read up on Google or hear other nail techs talk about. So it does take me a long time, and I spend probably a good 5 to 8 hours editing. It would just mean a lot for me to get that sort of confirmation that you guys appreciate it with the subscription button. This client obviously has some thicker nails. You can tell because of it's really hard for me to cut through them with my nippers. That is another common question I get. Why do your nails get thicker as you age? The most common reason that people would probably hear is it's due to improper, ill-fitting shoes and just the old adage, well, you're older. But that doesn't make any sense. Okay, so what? All of a sudden my nails don't grow the right way? It doesn't make any sense. So obviously I had to do some more digging. So basically what happens as we age, our circulation tends to decrease. That's why you see a lot of people in the elderly population complain of cold feet. You're not moving around as much, so your blood becomes more stagnant. It's not like flowing in the full reaches of the circulatory system as easily. And because of that, your nail cells start to slow down in the production phases. Your nails aren't growing as fast, and the cells that are forming tend to pile up on each other rather than getting pushed forward and off. So you have a tendency to get some thickness because of that. And it doesn't happen on every single nail. You'll see on this guy's foot, the first 3 nails are thicker, the 4th one is normal, the 5th one is also thick. Now, if you see a thick nail just on the pinky and maybe the big toe, and maybe even the second toe, that can be because of ill-fitting shoes. And the reason is because our shoes are not designed to fit our feet. They're designed to make your feet look skinnier. And we're seeing a trend in these days now where there's more of a square toe box, thank God, which allows the foot to rest in a very neutral and natural position and allows your toes to splay a little bit when you're walking without bumping into the sides of the shoe. But decades previously, and even still to this day, most shoes are still angled very narrowly in the toe box, and so that's compressing the toes together. And over time, but I'm talking years and years and years. I'm not talking like a month or two. I'm talking years of compression. Your toes, especially the 5th toe and the 1st toe, are going to feel the effects from that compression the most, and they're going to create a thicker nail. It's almost as if they're creating a calloused nail because the body's like, yo, there's too much pressure on here. I guess there might be some trouble. Let me just thicken up so that I don't get knocked off and more trauma happens. So it becomes almost like a calloused nail. same kind of reaction to how you form a callus with all the friction and pressure to one specific area. That's what happens to these nails. Another reason your nails could become thicker, you have underlying disease processes that affect your circulation, and that will in turn affect the rate of growth of your nails and the repair rate of your nails. And also that includes fungal infections. Obviously, if you have a fungal infection and you let it run rampant and really take over your nail's going to get thick and crumbly. So this is just a FYI. If you have or suspect you have a fungal infection, please treat it early. The earlier you treat it, the faster and easier it is to get rid of. Another common comment or question that I get is how do you correctly trim the nails? And there's a couple of ways to answer this. We are told that you should trim them straight across and have square corners, and that is going to prevent things like ingrown nails. However, there's a caveat to this in my experience, because if you have an elderly person that you're helping and their toes overlap or their toes are compressed together, the edges of the nail, if they are squared off, can very easily start to dig into the toe next door because there's a little sharp edge. So in the elderly population, I tend to trim the nails down as far as I can and round the corners off, because they aren't going to be coming in once a month. They're probably going to be coming in maybe 1 to 3 times a year max. And they obviously can't always do their nails for themselves, and they don't always have people to help them with that. So it's our duty as their nail tech to really reduce the length of the nail as far as we can, to prevent anything cutting into the skin next to that nail. Obviously, there might be some exceptions to this rule. If you've got somebody who already has a nail that's turning inward or has sort of like an involuted nail, you might not want to trim that one nail down as far as it goes, because you want to make sure that the nail border stays as wide as possible. And sometimes if you trim the nail down too far on an involuted nail, it can create more curl. We can talk about that another time. So assuming that these nails that we're trimming are relatively flat and don't give the client any problems other than their length, the best thing in my experience is to try and make sure that the corners are rounded at least, and that any of the nails that look like they can be pressing into the neighboring toe, I trim those nails down quite a bit. Another topic that comes up is what kind of pedicure should a person who is, let's just say, over 70 get? I tend to do a hybrid pedicure, so I start the toes dry and do all the maintenance stuff, and then I put them in the foot bath. Some people go straight into the foot bath, and there's a trend now into the waterless world where you don't have any water at all, just like moist towels maybe, or a steamer. I tend to go more dry with the elderly population, because not because of infection stuff from the water, but because the skin is getting thinner, and the older you get, the thinner the skin gets. I find that when the skin is softened with the water, if I use the e-file after having the skin be softened, it's a lot easier for me to tear the layers of the skin by accident. So with the nails and the skin being dry, it's much easier to control what I'm doing with the e-file and how much I'm actually exfoliating. That's just my personal opinion. I know that there are people out there who will die on the hill of water pedicures being the only way to do things, and same with waterless pedicures. I don't necessarily feel that way. It's just I don't I don't really care how you do your pedicures. I personally do it this way because I find the best results that in this method. I'm more of like the whole like there's more than one way to skin a cat. If you know what you're doing, you know what you're doing, and good for you. I just prefer it to do it this way. On his second toes, both feet, you may notice that that second toenail looks a lot thicker on the end, and there's some callousing going on the tip of the toe. I don't know if callousing is a word. I just made it up. Feel free to use it. You guys know what I mean, though, right? A lot of questions I get is, why do I have a thick nail right here on this one toenail? Now, you will notice that on his second toe is slightly longer than his first toe. So it is the longest toe on his foot, which is how mine are as well. And a lot of times these toes become what we call hammer toes because, again, you're being bent to conform inside a shoe that is not made for your foot because it's getting hit on the tip of the toe. So a lot of times people wear a size of the shoe that is not actually the correct size. And so every time they take a step, their foot comes forward and it jams into the front of the shoe. And this can happen more and more and more if you are in shoes with a very high heel. I'm not talking about pumps or like dress shoes. I'm even talking like sneakers. If you like, let's look at Hokas. Everybody knows a Hoka. Hokas have these huge heels, super cushiony, and then there's a drop to the toe. So you're effectively on like an inch of foam in the heel and maybe like a third of foam on the front, a third of inch. So you're slanted, and that puts your center of mass forward over your foot, even just a little bit. So every time you take a step forward, as you come forward over that foot, your foot's pushing into the front of the shoe. I'm a big proponent of zero drop shoes. I think if you have the ability to wear those, if your foot isn't compromised in any way, definitely go towards a zero drop shoe. It's going to put you in better alignment and it's going to prevent your feet from hitting the shoe in ways that are damaging to your toes and your nails. So anyway, repetitive nature of this sliding forward and hitting the front of the shoe over and over and over again over a number of years, is going to lead to some trauma in the nail and it's going to start thickening up. And then there's also going to be calluses forming on the tip of the toe as well, where it's getting that friction against the shoe over and over and over again. One of the things I try and do with thicker nails is thin them down to their more normal thickness. And I probably should have thinned his nails out prior to trying to cut them, because you probably saw me struggling to get my nippers through that nail earlier. It was pretty rough. But I did not, and so I'm just going to go back and use this carbide bit to take some of the thickness down so that it's a little bit easier for me to shape and trim down a little bit more afterwards. And now I'm going back with the diamond bit to remove any of the cuticle that's still remaining on the nail itself. You'll see he has some pretty heavy cuticle growth on most of his nails. So you'll see a lot of that flying off, which is, I think, some of the most satisfying part of giving the pedicure. I also started using the side of the barrel to smooth and shape, refine the shape of the nail after doing the bulk of the filing with the hand file. Sometimes I won't even use the hand file anymore if I don't have to. It just saves me a step, and this seems to be really effective at shaping and making sure that the corners are nice and smooth and the edges are smooth, and I can reduce some of that dry skin around the nails as well, all at the same time. You might be able to tell if you're a seasoned pedicure watcher like I am that this guy has some really nice impacted material on the sides there. So stick around because there's going to be some good cleaning coming up. So you probably didn't notice, but on this first foot, I used the different bit, the soft plane bit, to get into the sidewalls and underneath the proximal hood. I did all the refining around the cuticle with the soft plane bit, and I forgot to do it on the other foot. So I'm going to be doing it on the other foot after it's done soaking. but I want you to notice the difference in how much I am having to do on the foot post-soaking on the foot that I did use it on when it was dry versus with the foot that I didn't use it on when it was dry. Does that make sense? In other words, there's a lot less work for me to do on this foot that I'm working on now because I used the soft flame when the foot was dry, and there's going to be a lot more to do on the other foot after it's done soaking. I hope you can see this, but I see the skin around the cuticle edge is just looking frayed and just haggard because I didn't use that soft flame before I put him in the water. But this is a good demonstration because you'll see too how the skin reacts using an e-file bit when the skin's already wet versus how it just flakes off a little bit easier when it's dry. It makes it a little bit harder to refine the edges because you don't want that skin to peel back too far, and sometimes it just doesn't let go, it doesn't flake off as easy when it's wet. So then you have to come back again with the nippers and trim away whatever's sticking up. Whereas when the skin is dry, it's much more likely to flake away. It doesn't always, but in his case, that's what happened. So I thought that was an interesting side-by-side comparison. I hit a lot of the common questions I normally get, but if I did not hit a question that you would like me to answer regarding the feet of the elderly, put them in the comments and I'm happy to help you with answering that question. Maybe I'll feature it in the next video that I have so that you guys can hear a long droning on explanation like I tend to do. For this step, I'm using the Ingrown toenail rasp. It comes in a kit with an ingrown sidewall lifter. And I like this tool better than the lifter for this type of thing because it has that serrated edge and it can grasp that debris a lot more easily. I don't have to go back in as often or as long in order to grab all of it out. So I'm going to do a real quick plug. If you are a nail technician and you are interested in working on more advanced and complicated cases and you don't know which course to take, or maybe you've already taken a couple courses and you want something a little bit deeper, I would encourage you to try my online course. It's specifically for fungus and helping those overcome fungus. But the techniques that I teach, you can apply to any kind of nail problem, really. I'm also going to be working on developing one on ingrown toenails and a bunch of other stuff. But for now, the only one I have available is the Mastering Nail and Foot Fungus Expert Training for Nail Technicians. The link is in my description box if you are interested in looking more into that. I would love you if you took this, not just because it's my course, but because there are so many clients out there who don't have access to a nail technician who knows how to handle somebody with foot fungus or nail fungus. And obviously, I'm the only one in my area, so people travel from all over to see me. But even if you lived in my area, you should still take it because I can't see but so many people. There's a huge need for nail technicians out there who actually can help those with nail and foot fungus. So take a look, see if it's up your alley, and just know that you will have access to the course forever. Even if I update it with new information, you'll have access to that at no extra charge, and you'll be on a list that of my graduates, obviously, and no extra charge for that. I don't want there to be any kind of obstacle between you and your clients. So I'm not going to put money involved there. The only thing you have to pay for is the course, and that's it. So it's a great course. It's so in depth. It's better than any course out there. I promise you. I've made sure of it. So, okay, that's it. You guys don't come at me about my technique with nipping. I know that my nippers are not as sharp as they need to be, and I noticed it while I was getting the pedicure. I I know I'm tugging, and I didn't tug hard. It just looks like I'm tugging hard. I stopped tugging as much as I could, trying to get the nip, cut all the way through. Obviously, these nippers need to be sharpened. So don't come at me. I already ordered and have new nippers that I can use for the future while I get these guys sharpened. So just wanted to put that out there before I get any kind of comments. All right, guys, before and afters are coming up soon. I just want to say thank you once again for hanging out with me. If you learned something new, would you place it in the comments so I know what it is that was, made an impact on you today? I'd love to figure out if I'm actually helping you guys or not. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.